So really quickly, I think it's really important that we start with why when understanding this issue. Why we're doing it. Why this is so important to Governor Ducey. As Governor Ducey mentions here in this quote, it's about making our Department of Corrections truly about corrections. This is a human issue. It's important to understand that when we came to the table 2 years ago as a team, the governor's office, agency directors, stakeholders, nonprofit organizations, private sector companies, we looked at recidivism in Arizona as a public safety issue. We had the same individuals committing crimes day in and day out in our society. We looked at it as something that if we can reduce recidivism, we can make our communities safer. We can also get a better deal for our taxpayers. It costs $65 a day to incarcerate an inmate in the Department of Corrections. That's about $24,000 a year. That's real money that can go towards other initiatives that are important to the governor, important to the state, important to our constituents. Education, infrastructure, and others. So we have this public safety concern that we want to address. We know it's important to address this issue, and we can get that better deal for the taxpayers. But at the end of the day, the title of this presentation, the title of our initiative, is a real second chance. It's a real second chance because it's a human issue. These are individuals that have gone into prison. They've served their time. When their time comes to be released from prison, government needs to get out of the way and put opportunities in front of these individuals to help them get back on their feet. If we can put opportunities in front of someone, it truly becomes a second chance, a real second chance, and not just a second chance. You can release someone from prison and say, here's your second chance, don't blow it. You put opportunities in front of someone, now it's a real second chance. Now we have an ability to improve our public safety, get a better deal for our taxpayers, and do the right thing. A few of the things that we've done. We created a reentry center in Maricopa County in North Phoenix at the Adobe Mountain Complex, a facility that allows individuals a real second chance instead of going back to prison. And these individuals that go to the reentry center, 100% of these individuals have been going back to prison because they were violating the terms of their release. By having this facility, we can get them into intensive drug treatment programs for 60 days, for example. Give them that last opportunity to get back on their feet and get clean so they don't go back to prison. We have employment centers that we set up. When the governor announced the employment centers in the State of the State address in January of this year, the Department of Economic Security and the Department of Corrections worked great together and quickly to create a pilot program with 3 employment centers. We've got the Lewis Prison in Buckeye, the Perryville Prison, which is our women's facility in Goodyear, and the Tucson Prison Complex. These employment centers allow people to get a resume, job training skills, interview skills, get connected with employers, attend job fairs, so that when they're released from prison, many of them already have a job waiting. And I'll be happy to go over some of those stats later on in the presentation. We've got the employment centers, our post-release fire crew for inmates that after they're released can serve on a fire crew fighting our wildfires. I mean, just such an amazing and powerful quote. One of these individuals told the governor, a member of the fire crew said, I went from feeling like a zero to feeling like a hero. That really sums up that issue. Our Vivitrol pilot program, Vivitrol is a fascinating drug that actually blocks the receptors from someone getting high from opioids or alcohol. We've been able to have a partnership with the maker alchemies of that drug in order to get free shots for individuals that screen pop properly prior to release, so that when they're released, they have that opportunity not to immediately go back to their addiction to opioids or even alcohol. We've added substance abuse counselors. We've added at least 6 in the past year. These substance abuse counselors are so essential to providing somebody the treatment programs they need to get off these dangerous drugs.
everyone really covered some inspiring stories out there.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, so the results. A few of the things that we've seen already. A 10% drop in technical violators over the past year. What does this mean? It means that when someone's violating the terms of their release, maybe it's a dirty drug test, maybe they're not meeting with their community supervision officer, also normally referred to as a parole officer, and you go back to prison, so you technically violate. Our efforts as a state over the past year, we've seen the results as a 10% reduction in that number. That means that we've had, over the past year, 370 individuals that would have gone back to prison on a technical violation, that instead are having opportunities in front of themselves to get back on their feet and become a contributing member of society. I think it's very important to understand that that percentage up there is just a percentage. But if you were to go to their families, if you were to go to those individuals and you were to talk to them, what does this mean for you? That's 370 lives, 370 human beings that we're talking about that now have that real second chance of getting back on their feet. The employment centers, as I mentioned, are currently in 3 of our prison complexes. Over the 6-month period, roughly from the end of March until just a couple weeks ago when these numbers were run, we had gotten 380 high-risk individuals graduate through this program. A high-risk individual is someone that the Department of Corrections, and using nationwide best practice tools, will determine someone's risk to recidivate. The risk to recidivate could be, a number of things. Their age, for example, the younger you are, the more likely you are to recidivate. Your substance abuse past, also a key likelihood of recidivating. We are focusing our resources on individuals that have the highest risk of recidivating. Of those individuals, we've gotten 204 people employed. That's 54%. That's an amazing percentage, and that's only made possible because of great partnerships between the state of Arizona, multiple agencies, I'll mention, not just the Department of Corrections, but our Department of Economic Security that now has job and employment counselors located at the facilities so that they can coach someone on how to build a resume. They can coach someone how to interview for a job, and they can line them up with those employment opportunities. We have some great employers with us today. As an example, we host job fairs. We're very proud of that success, and it's something we would really like to build upon and scale in Maricopa County. We've also had the largest drop in our inmate population since 1974. So what's next? What else is the state prepared to do, and things that we'd like to talk about today? I'm going to turn it over to Ben Henderson, the Governor's Deputy Chief Operating Officer, to talk about this next issue.
Thanks, Tim. Good morning. So we're really excited today to announce later today the Governor will be issuing an executive order. This executive order applies to state agencies, and we're calling it Second Chance Box. What that means is that state agencies will no longer inquire about an applicant's criminal history until after they've turned in their application and received an initial interview. So before, individuals applying for jobs would often assume that they were not even qualified or that they would be immediately rejected without even turning in that application. We're going to change that for our state agencies. So when someone applies, we're going to give them that opportunity to come in, have a conversation with the state agency employer, and walk through exactly what that means. About a quarter of Arizona's workforce has some kind of history of either arrest or conviction. And it's important that these individuals have the opportunity, have the second chance to be contributing members of society. So let me be clear, this applies to state agencies. It does not apply to the private sector. Although just like the Babies at Work program that we've launched, we welcome the private sector to join us in this effort, and we'd be happy to help private employers do the same. We'll reach out, you should reach out to us, we'll get this done.
Thanks, Ben. Now I'd like to turn it over to Gretchen Martinez, the Governor's Deputy Chief of Staff, to talk about what the state's doing to enroll these inmates with access prior to release.
So it's really important from our perspective that the individuals who go through corrections, who are eventually going to be released, if they're eligible, have access coverage, have Medicaid. Because a lot of the issues that we deal with when it comes to recidivism are specifically related to drug addiction. And so if we can connect them to access while they're still in prison, it eliminates a step on the outside, right? Some of these people have been in prison for 5, 10, 15 years. It's hard enough getting out of prison, figuring out where you're gonna live, where you're gonna go to work, but then having to figure out how to sign up for access. Even waiting a few days, a week, 2 weeks before you actually go make that initial application can result in a relapse from a drug addiction. We are trying to make sure that in every way possible we avoid that. And therefore, since September of 2016, we've helped over 5,000 inmates leaving our prison systems gain access to Medicaid. So we're really proud of that.
Any questions so far? You guys want us to keep moving? All right, let's keep going.
Great. So as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, some of the success that we're seeing right now in our employment centers, in our reentry centers, have brought us to the decision that what would be fantastic is to be able to scale this success in Maricopa County, to be able to do more, to affect more change. And so what we'd really like to see is being able to expand our reentry centers and expand our employment centers and reentry centers. I think there is opportunity, with the county, for example, in getting rid of Tent City, and on the Durango campus in general, and meeting with the county, we realized that there is a pretty good amount of vacancy down on that facility that we would love to work with our partners at Maricopa County to find a win-win solution, and for everyone that we can mutually benefit on both levels here. The central location of the Durango campus is really appealing because all you have to do is drive out to our employment center in Buckeye at the Lewis Prison to get why this is important. We are so thankful for all the employers and trainers and everyone that make that travel on a daily basis. They drive an hour to Buckeye and an hour back. If we're able to relocate our employment centers to somewhere centrally located within Phoenix, we will have the ability to get many more of these individuals employed, get them skill sets, and in turn, reduce recidivism in Maricopa County. So what does the data show us on this issue? First and foremost, we have a 39% recidivism rate in Arizona. Of our Arizona Department of Corrections inmates, just over 42,000 individuals, 62.5% of those individuals come from Maricopa County. They're likely to be released in Maricopa County. Again, a percentage is one thing. I think you have to think of the number of lives here, the individuals. That 62.5% is actually 26,000 inmates that we currently have in the Department of Corrections from Maricopa County. That's why we've realized that in order to focus our resources where we can make the most impact, it needs to be focused more on Maricopa County, where over 26,000 of our inmates are currently from. So this is just an overview map of the Durango campus. We're working with the county and all of their representatives to try to find the right fit for what we want to do and try to find an area that will be mutually beneficial to us all. So our employment center, as I've mentioned, we have a 100-bed capacity at the Lewis Prison and about a 50-bed capacity both at Perryville and at Tucson, giving us currently about a 200-bed capacity. What we'd like to do is expand that in the Phoenix area and have a 335-bed capacity facility that would be capable of treating over 1,700 individuals on an annual basis. That's something that, as I've mentioned, if we can more centrally locate this facility, we can have much more success and build upon the success that we've already seen. But we're not just focused on the employment centers, but just to quickly note, we have these great employment partners. This is just to name a few of the partners that we have currently working with the state of Arizona in these employment centers. I will say that after the successful press coverage of the governor's travel to our Lewis Prison and touring the employment center in August, we have received a lot of feedback from employers across Maricopa County and across the state that want to get involved. They want to be able to hire these individuals, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because these companies currently have the capacity. They have the job vacancies out there, and they need to find employees to fill them, which is the perfect win-win. It's not only good to reduce our efforts on recidivism, it also helps the economy in Maricopa County and the state of Arizona. Getting these individuals off of the state's dime and on to, providing for themselves, being a contributing member of society, getting their life back together. That's the true win-win with getting them employed. Again, we're not just focused on the employment centers, we're also focused on these reentry centers, which are also commonly referred to as community correction centers. Community correction centers have been a nationwide best practice in reducing recidivism and giving someone that real second chance instead of going back to prison on a technical violation. We would love to have a 265 bed capacity facility in the Phoenix area that would be capable of treating over 3,500 individuals on an annual basis.
So just to be clear, so the Durango concept is that there'd be these two facilities, one being the employment center and one being this reentry community.
Exactly, so two separate facilities. Your employment center actually has inmates, individuals that are still locked up, that are still serving the last 60 days of their prison sentence. A community correction center or a reentry center is someone who's already been released from prison. That person's free, but they're in danger of violating the terms of their release. They're in danger of going back. And so they would be able to go through programs like this in order not to go back to prison.
Would
Yes.
an inmate get transferred to the employment center?
Yes.
Okay, so that's how that would work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So what we do, the Department of Corrections uses a statewide model of identifying the best individuals for the employment center. It's a privilege to be offered the ability to go to an employment center, but they have to voluntarily then accept going to the employment center. When we first started the employment center, we immediately heard from the Department of Corrections that people, frankly, didn't want to go there. They said, this is new, this is different, I don't know how this is really going to work out. Let me just serve the last 60 days of my time and figure this thing out. We started the employment centers. Word traveled so fast about the success that they were having there, that the real second chance that was taking place, we now have a long waiting list at the Department of Corrections in order to get into the employment centers. So it went from, as Ms. Hellman will note, word travels fast within prisons. It travels pretty fast on the yard. And so very quickly, word traveled throughout the state of Arizona that these employment centers are really a fantastic opportunity. And individuals then now have this motivation to be able to have good behavior, for example, so that they can have an opportunity to get to an employment center. I will note that last year, the governor's office was one of 5 states to receive technical assistance through the National Governors Association for something called the National Criminal Justice Reform Project. We focused our application for technical assistance on reentry centers and substance abuse treatment. The National Criminal Justice Reform Project gave us a nationwide best practice expert who's been a deputy director of corrections and has been working a consultant nationwide to come into Arizona, give us honest feedback, and review our programs. He's not an easy person to please, but when he visited our employment centers, he came back and told us, that's the jewel to your crown. It's going to work not because you're giving people jobs, you're giving them careers. There's a big difference between giving them a career and giving them a job. Something, a career, that when that first job is done, they still have that opportunity, they can still provide for themselves. We're also, and I thought this is so important, he said it's going to work because you're changing the mindset. You're giving people hope. If you go and you talk to the individuals, like we've done on many occasions, and you talk to them that are going to the employment center, you'll hear from them firsthand that they now feel like they have hope. They've never had, many of these individuals have never had a resume. They've never had any of these types of opportunities. And if you can change the thinking, you can truly make the biggest impact on this issue, which is what we want to do in what we want to
Tim,
accomplish.
could you just address what kind of population is at the center? You know,
Yep, so people that have drug addictions that need intensive drug treatment programs, people that don't have a housing plan, they don't have anywhere to go. Karen, do you want to add anything specific on the population?
Some individuals who are committing what we call technical violations, which means they're not showing up for appointments, they're not doing their counseling, they're not staying in contact with their community corrections officer, those kinds of things which aren't a danger to the public, but we want to get them back on the right track.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I also want to take this time to make an important note, which is that currently at the Maricopa Reentry Center at the MRC at Adobe Mountain, there are no sex offenders at that facility. No homeless sex offenders at that facility. We'd also like to announce that we are not going to have homeless sex offenders at a reentry center on the Durango campus as well. We've made that decision. It's something that we're very confident of. We think that we can have an effective reentry center without having that population there. So I'd like to note that as well today.
What do you do with those folks though?
Well, those individuals, we're actually working with Director Ryan and the entire team internally to get them set up with a better housing plan prior to release. We feel that we can do a better job internally of setting opportunities in front of them prior to release so that we don't have to deal with as many sex offenders being released homeless. And it's something that we're working with the Department of Corrections to finalize those plans as well. We do have a successful, at our reentry center in Tucson, we've been very successful the last 5 years and having no issues with having homeless sex offenders report through that facility. But in Maricopa County, we actually feel confident enough that we can work with Director Ryan and others within the Department of Corrections to provide more programming, better housing plans, better services. We're working with nonprofit faith-based organizations on a number of other issues. We feel like our faith-based and nonprofit organizations have been fantastic to work with. Those are other organizations that we'd like to talk to about what are all of our options to be able to address this issue. I'd also like to announce a very innovative, exciting partnership with Uber. We had an agency director at the state of Arizona came up with a great idea at one of our reducing recidivism meetings about we need to tackle the issue of lack of transportation in our efforts to reduce recidivism. You'll hear it directly from many of the inmates if you go into the prisons. What's your biggest concern when you leave prison? Many of them say transportation. I have no way of getting around. Even if I get that job, let's say I get a construction job that starts at 4 a.m. or 4:30 in the morning. The bus isn't running. I can't get there. I have no transportation. That'll probably be the reason why I don't succeed. And we thought Uber is an amazing service that allows people to get rides at any time of day. We contacted Uber. Uber was very generous and said that they would give us $5,000 of free rides if the state of Arizona would also match the $5,000, which we agreed. So we've got $10,000 worth of rides that we're going to start within the next 2 weeks of giving individuals free transportation to get to some of the most important days of their lives and getting back on track. It could be a job interview, it could be their first couple days of work, it could be a variety of different things, but having that transportation in place that we can book the ride for them, help them get back on their feet, get them to that, towards that first paycheck is something we're really excited about. We're very thankful for the generosity of Uber and being able to partner with them on this initiative. We think this is something that we're going to start small with $10,000. We think we're going to be able to see some success with this program that we'll be able to expand this program as well. We want to prove that it can work first. Just really quickly of some of the things of what success can look like. We would expect our 3-year recidivism rates for employment center graduates, again, your highest risk to recidivate individuals, we think we can decrease that by 30%. We also think we can reduce the post-incarceration income gap for employment center participants by 50%. What this means is that on average, when someone is released from prison and they get a job, I think it's around 25%. They're making about 25% as much as someone without that felony conviction. We think we can actually narrow that gap by 50%, get them into better paying jobs which is a win for everyone. We also think we can reduce the amount of these technical revocations, these technical violations, by having a larger community correction center and employment center. We think we can have a much higher success rate, where we would only expect 5% or fewer to reoffend through the sanctions programs. Cost savings to the taxpayers, we think we could save the taxpayers anywhere from 20 to 30 $1 million estimated in annual savings. As I mentioned earlier, it costs our Department of Corrections $65 a day to incarcerate somebody, which is about $24,000 a year. Looking for a real second chance, this is the human side of this issue, and a great highlight from the Arizona Republic, and a couple powerful quotes there from one of our employment center participants. And as mentioned, we have a great success story in Don here today that was released in 2015, and he's been doing phenomenal work in the community and employment, training others. So if you're looking to talk to someone about a success story firsthand, feel free to talk to Don afterwards. And without further ado, that completes the presentation.
And just to highlight, Tim talked about the potential cost savings. Part of this is the right thing to do, but the governor also thinks this is a huge benefit to taxpayers.